Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Amy Prokopis. I am the author of the young adult science fiction novel called The Arena, and welcome to my channel. Welcome back if you've been here before. If you haven't already, like and subscribe this video. On this channel, I talk a lot about my writing updates. Occasionally, I post about my process, which is what this video will be all about, and I've already recorded this video once. This is a re-recording because I did not like the very first version. It was very long, very wordy, so I'm going to try and get straight to the point for all of you because I'm sure you would much rather watch that than a very, very long video. So that's what I'm going to do today. So this video is part 2 of last week's. Last week's video, I talked about the reasons why I decided to self-publish my first book rather than go into traditional publishing. So if you're interested in my thought process, why I made that decision, and my journey to get to that point, that is last week's video, which you can find on this channel also. Today's video is going to cover the resources that I used and the tips and tricks that I found super helpful. And I'm also going to include kind of a list of things that I wish I would have done. And if I could go back in time, I would most definitely tell myself last June to do these things and do them now. So that's what this video is all about. And if you hear background noise, I'm so sorry. I have the dryer going. I had to do laundry this morning. It had to be done. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Let's go ahead and get into it with point number 1. This first one is kind of dumb. Do your research. By do your research, I mean look in a variety of places and try to keep it as recent as possible because the world of publishing and everything related to books changes very, very fast. So, for instance, everything is different now than it was just a couple of years ago. Self-publishing is a more viable option for people than it was just a couple years ago. It's also kind of a flooded market. So there are a lot of people that are hopping on Amazon and publishing all the time because they make it so easy. So make sure that you're doing your research. There's a lot of videos here on YouTube where people talk about the process of self-publishing. Make sure that you research how much it's going to cost because yes, you can self-publish for absolutely nothing. However, if you're wanting to do it really professionally and you're wanting self-publishing to become maybe a side gig for you or even your full-time job along the way, you want to do it in a professional manner. And in order to do it in a professional manner, you need to work with a certain amount of professionals. So research how much it costs and do general Google searches, look through videos, and ask a lot of questions. So there are people online like YouTube, Instagram, all of us indie authors, we love to share the process. So hop online, find somebody and follow them from beginning to end, how they did it, and see what you learn from that and how it can apply to the project you're working on. Number 2 is the 6-month rule of thumb. What that means is typically when you're launching a book and self-publishing it all yourself, the general rule I found online and I found to work really well for myself is to give yourself 6 months from the time that you announce your book to the day that you publish it. That time in the middle should be 6 months apart. And the reason for this is not just because it takes you time to do all of the steps involved in self-publishing, but 6 months is also a good amount of time to build a lot of buzz and do a lot of marketing. And marketing is not something I did as much of as I had wished now. I wish I had done more of that when I was in the process of self-publishing. So that's something I would definitely go back and tell myself to do more of is marketing. But 6 months is a really good timeline to do all of those things. It gives you a good window to get things done, but also to promote your book in the meantime and keep people on the hook while you show them the process. Number 3 is where more of my advice pieces come in and all of my resources. So my biggest piece of advice and something I learned from a lot of other published authors as I followed their progress through self-publishing is to pay for your cover, because people definitely judge a book by their cover. So if your book doesn't look on the shelf like every other book out there, people are not going to take it as seriously, 1. And 2, if your book doesn't look professionally done, people will assume that it's not professionally done, even if you've done a ton of work on the inside to make sure the writing's really great. So I would always pay for your cover. If you are a graphic designer, then you can probably do the cover to a professional degree all by yourself at no cost. I am not. So I paid somebody to do my cover, and I'm so glad that I did. You can find cover designers in a lot of places. So there's like Fiverr, Upwork, all of these places where people freelance. You can also go to Reedsy, Reedsy. I'm just going to put it down below. It's fine. And I did a whole lot of things via Reedsy. I highly recommend Reedsy as a resource. You can find all of those freelancers on there. A lot of them are working in the industry with traditional publishing houses, and they're just freelancing on Reedsy on the side. So that's what my cover designer was doing, was freelancing. The same thing can be true for my editor, which is my second point. Always pay for your cover designer, always pay for your editor, because it's always nice to have a fresh set of eyes, especially a fresh set of eyes that comes from somebody within the industry that's trained in the practices. So while you may say like, oh, I had my high school English teacher read the book and she thought it was great. Well, that's great, but your high school English teacher isn't necessarily working in the world of books. And so while they may make a really good beta reader, somebody to read like your really early draft so you can fix it before you pay for that big editor, they're not going to know the ins and outs of publishing. And that's what an editor does. They know what kinds of things will sell on the shelves, and they can help reflect that within your writing. So I would pay for those 2 things at least. There are other areas you can always spend money, like marketing and such. But if you are just starting out, it's your first book, and you're not wanting to spend a whole lot of money, I would put your money into those 2 things for sure, because that makes a huge difference. The cover, it's the first thing your reader sees and entices them to pick the book up off the shelf. Your editor, because once they get that book off the shelf and they start reading it, if it's not edited by a professional and it doesn't look professional on the inside, they're going to trash you in the reviews, or they're going to stop reading entirely. Either way, you're not going to gain more readers. So those 2 things are a must. The next thing that I wish I had done is use beta readers and ARC readers. So those are 2 different things, but they do very similar things. So if you have written your book, you have a solid draft 1, you've been through it a little bit yourself and fixed some mistakes, you're going to then go and find beta readers. Beta readers usually work for free. I would never pay for a beta reader if it was me. There are people out there that will provide beta reading services for a price. So that's up to you. I think that's a little bit of a scam. I would just find people in my own life close to me that I feel comfortable reading a very early draft of the book, because that's what it is. It's an early draft. Sometimes there are even scenes that you know are problematic and you just don't know exactly how to fix it, and you are looking for suggestions. That's what your beta readers do. You can find them online all over the place. There are groups on Goodreads, for instance, that are beta reading groups. You can find them on Facebook, also beta reading groups. But your mom, your sister, your English teacher from your old high school, or your local librarian and bookstore owner, those people can all be super valuable beta readers, because not only will they give you really good feedback because of their backgrounds, but they can also help promote your book along the way because they've already read it and they can potentially review it and recommend it to other people. That's why I would start with librarians and bookstore owners, because they know the industry as well. They know what their people that are coming into their store are picking up. As far as beta readers go, they're reading an early version of your book. So if it was me, this is just me because I'm a little bit paranoid. I would, before I ever get my book into beta readers' hands, I would go ahead and copyright it with copyright.gov. That is the United States website that produces the legal documents for copyright. I would do that. However, just so and you're clear, if you don't want to go ahead and do that this early, anything that you produce yourself is already owned by you. So you don't really need a copyright to argue that. The copyright just helps protect you a little bit and gives you a little bit more weight if you did need to jump into a court case, heaven forbid. Not super common, but it does happen, and sometimes it costs authors a lot of money. So I went ahead and did that. I thought it was helpful. Most authors copyright their books at the finish line anyway. And so I went ahead and did it before anyone read it. So that would be my advice with beta readers. ARC readers are a little bit different. ARC readers come later in the process. So you've beta read, you've made all of your fixes, you've sent it off to that editor that you're paying for. They've told you what to fix. You fixed it or not, who knows. You have the cover and you have a pretty solid finished product, and now you're putting it together to form that physical book. So you print copies before you publish it just to make sure, for one, that the cover fits the actual book. There's nothing wrong with that. But two, it's a really good marketing tool right before you publish a book. So there are people out there that are ARC readers, which is advanced reader copy. They will read those books, and the expectation is that they'll read that they'll read that nearly finished draft, and then they'll review it online. And I did not do any ARC readers. I wish I had, because what ARC readers essentially do for you is they go ahead and provide you reviews online for your book on day one, which is huge, because I don't know about you, but if I'm shopping for things, for instance, on Amazon, if I'm shopping for let's say I'm shopping for a red dress and I find 2 listed on Amazon, one has no reviews, but I think it's really pretty. The other has a ton of reviews. Maybe I don't think it's as pretty as the one with no reviews, but I can guarantee that people have reviewed it and there wasn't a problem with the dress. So I'm probably going to pick the one with the more reviews. And the same can be said for books. If no one is talking about it, people may not be as likely to pick it up until they hear more about it. So ARC readers, they'll give you reviews on day one versus just putting your book out there and hoping that somebody picks it up and then reviews it. So, and reviews are important for authors because it bumps you up in the algorithm. It makes it easier for people to find you online because your book may get recommended to them because of how somebody reviewed it, or if it's similar if it's similar to another book that has also been reviewed and has similar reviews. So I wish I had done those things. You can find ARC readers very similar to how you find beta readers. Goodreads, you can look online. There are also tons of people that write book blogs. People who own and consistently put out book blogs make wonderful ARC readers because they have a following already. And so there's their following that you can also gain. Same thing with podcasts. If you could reach out to somebody that has a podcast about a book, that would be a good place to start. And as always, going back to librarians and bookstores, they make really good ARC readers as well because, well, they're in the industry and they have the following of the people that they're serving and their clientele. So that's the 2 things that I would definitely have gone back to do if I could hop in the DeLorean, let's say. Number 5 is a mindset that I wish I had taken earlier in the process, which is treat it all like a business. Of course, you're going to take it seriously, when you go into self-publishing because there's a lot of work involved and there is some cost involved if you're going to do it in a professional manner. But I would treat it like a small business. Treat it like all those costs are the foundation. You know, like when you start a business, there's a certain amount you have to pay in order to get started. And then you hope that that comes all back to you once you come out with the product. So it's the same thinking. You got to treat it like a business because essentially that's exactly what it is. You're selling a product just like anything else. In the early days of self-publishing, my goal, and still is, was just to share my work with the world. I wanted to share my stories, my characters, with other people that love to read stories and about characters. And that's what writing always has been for me. That's always been the goal, and that still is. But I think a lot of us, when we're writing books, we don't think about the business side of that. Like you have to be able to sell them in order to continue doing what you do. So think of it as a business. That was something that I learned by the time I got to like cover design and when the marketing started to come in. And that's when I realized, oh, I should have done some of this a couple of months ago and things would be a little bit easier right now. So think of it as a business. It definitely made such a big difference in where I am right now and how I'm picking up speed moving forward. And lastly, number 6, don't let fear keep you from publishing. I spent a ton of time thinking that the reason I didn't get any response from all of the agents and publishers that I was querying along the way, I just assumed I wasn't any good. And that's just not the truth. Like I said in the last little clip about treating it all like a business, publishers 100% treat this as a business because they have to sell books, right? They have to have a product that is going to continue their business because they really are a business. They sell books. And so I took a lot of that, I guess, lack of response. I took a lot of that to heart and I let that keep me from moving forward. And I put off self-publishing for a really long time just because I thought I needed to break through the gatekeepers. And that's not true. So I have a whole lot more to say about this. And I put it in the last video from last week, all about the reasons why I decided to self-publish my first book. I'll include a link to that one below. But the bottom line is, don't let the fear of people not liking your work, rejection, don't let any of